Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to yet another live with THiNC Institute of Design with the NIFT Situation Test around the corner. There's been a lot of discussions, a lot of buzz about the NIFT Situation Test. And in this particular video, we have two of our champions who are currently at NIFT Hyderabad who would help us in figuring out how exactly their NIFT Situation Test went, how was their preparation, and also where all they messed up. What were their mistakes so that we don't have to repeat it again. So we have Adit and Rachel, who's joined from NIFT Hyderabad. Hello, Adit. Hello, Rachel.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So to start off with, we'll begin with obviously the overall experience of preparing for the NIFT situation test in itself. Okay. After that, we'll take detailed questions one by one. So to start off with, Rachel, how was your experience of preparing for the NIFT situation test and also the 2 hours of NIFT situation test? How was it?
Okay, so for me personally, it was a very good experience joining a think and coming for the situation practice. So basically, our schedule was around 15 days, our practice sessions, and we had practiced material usage, then techniques, and finally we went to the product. So it was quite a good experience, and there's a lot to learn from that. And the 2 hours was actually kind of fun. It was just another day at NIFT. I felt it was something like that. And the main thing is like not to get tense and just do what you have in front of you. Just utilize the time, and it was very good experience for me personally.
Okay. Which was the campus that you had selected for writing situation test?
I got NIFT Kannur. I chose NIFT Kannur.
NIFT Kannur. Okay.
Yeah.
Adit, coming to you, how was your experience of 2 weeks of preparation?
I actually felt the think situation test workshop was actually really beneficial because most of my learning from that workshop. Every day we had different models to make and different types of questions, and the think questions that they gave us were almost the same when it came to the NIFT situation test. So I had a really good idea on what to do actually. I had a lot of techniques down and a lot of basic things to look out for. I was already good on that. So, and when I came to the test, it was with a lot of my friends. So it was really fun actually. More fun, like it was another day, I think, than a NIFT exam. Yeah.
Okay, I think you could even be the brand ambassador for NIFT because you are the one who dropped an ID even after
Yeah.
getting an ID and
Yeah.
went to NIFT Hyderabad. Okay, more on that stories in the coming questions. Okay, so to start off with, let's start with the techniques that you had sort of improvised and learned and things like that. So Rachel, what were the kind of techniques that you had used? What were the kind of different materials you tried to work upon? Can you tell us the strategy of those 2 weeks of window that you had?
Yeah, so the 15-day workshop, actually, like I said before, it was divided into a few sections. And the first, we had learned techniques like origami, which was actually very important. Like it saves a lot of time and you get a very good out of that. And even paper weaving technique is another important thing that you could learn. Another way is the NIFT basically looks at precision or how aesthetic your product, the final product is. Neatness is the main important thing. So paper cutting, scoring, and all of that is another important thing. And finally, presentation also comes into picture where how are you if there are materials that really look good, don't just keep it inside or just cover the product with the papers that look good or like that. So those are some important things that we need to look at.
Okay.
So I think 15 days is more than enough to actually, come out with a good product or a good work.
Okay. Once you get in, 15 days is a lot of time, right? When you look back at it, you have a lot of time. You have been enjoying for around 6 months to 1 year at NIFT that you know a lot of things about NIFT. Okay.
Yeah.
Coming to Adit, Adit, how was it? And how did you also, techniques when you're talking about aesthetics and neatness? Rachel is also highlighting the point of neatness, even
Mhm.
using the tools correctly and things like that. No, so can you
Yeah.
just take us through the procedures the practices that you had done? to ensure that sort of
Uh,
precision, neatness, and aesthetics?
I actually didn't use a lot of what do you say, uh, like what she said, paper weaving or anything. The materials they had given also had like really good textures to it. So I didn't experiment with them. I used those textures for the model I was making. So I just cut it properly. There was a tools are very important. So like when you're using cardboard, you should always remember to score before you fold. You make a line so that the fold comes properly. A lot of people just fold directly, and that creates a sort of very crackly line. So that's not very neat or aesthetic. So always score. Those techniques are important, like technical skills, as much as and using those textures, different textures into your model would give it a little unique look. This is what I think.
So what what do you think of the judging parameters? Like you are in a very powerful
Mm.
position right now, right? Both of you. So like you have the ability to be at NIFT right now.
Mm.
You have the ability to look back now. It's a bit more
Mm.
easy. So what would you say? Like, what's the importance of aesthetics, functionality? What would be the criteria, Adit?
It would always be aesthetics first than functionality when it comes to lift, and also how neat it looks. It shouldn't have. They really do look at if you're using glue or clay. The clay they give is very oily, so if that clay, the clay's oil kind of smudges your work or on the papers, they're gonna deduct marks for that. Or if you're using glue, if there's a remnants of the glue in your model somewhere where it's very visible, they're going to deduct marks for that. So always make sure it's very neat and there's not a lot of visual imbalances in your model. It,
So is it the same even now? Like after you have entered into NIFT, does NIFT have the same criteria? Does
yeah,
NIFT have the
for juries they do look at those same parameters.
Okay. How was the jury, Rachel, by the way? Probably I should not be asking that.
I mean, the jury wasn't too great, but we are just like it was our first jury, so we put lot of effort into it. And when the judge, they just simply sit like this and say bad comments, it kind of hurts. Yeah, but it's fine. It's fine.
Let's just say that you both have survived the first
Mm.
jury and
Yeah.
staying here. Okay. Now, talking about when we have questions, the different types of questions, right? You might have questions on sports, on space design and things like that. So, what's the importance of ideation, and how much time should somebody spend on ideation? Rachel, I'll start with you.
So we have a packet, and there are lots of materials in that, but each material won't be of the same quantity. Maybe you have five colored sheets, just one ivory sheet, one net, one cardboard, then a few wooden sticks, then
Mm,
one wire, and the materials would be in different quantities. So before starting, we need to actually understand how much each material we are using for the product. So you need to have a basic ideation of what you're going to make. Like if you have a base for the thing, this much amount of cardboard will be used, and only have few of that left for other models. And if I'm, for example, making a classroom, I need to have benches. I need to have a base also. So for
mm,
cardboard, I'll be using that, and I need to
mm,
utilize it and make a model in which I could also make the tables out of the cardboard. So
mm.
you have to have a balance for that. So then, otherwise, um, um,
So if
ideation,
I
yeah.
if I look at that 2 hours, like what I try to ask is like how much time you spend for ideation, how much for working on it, and how much for the write up. Any thumb rule that you have followed, or did you just go with the flow?
Not much of time I kept for ideation because 2 hours. And then when I read the question itself, I found that one question I felt very comfortable that I will be doing very good. So in that I have used origami technique. So that's why I was very confident. So I thought I'll stick on to that. And then I had a base idea that this will come here and this will come there. I had a base idea. Then I later on added elements to it while I was working through it. So I didn't spend much time on ideation, but I had an idea of what materials I'll be using where and how much quantity I'll have. That's it. And
Your
then
fundament.
the right,
Yeah,
yes,
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
then the write-up is also an important thing because it will show the jury or the judges what you have done. So uh, don't keep it to the last. Like in a rush, you can't do it because you need to
Mm,
have to write the, if you, for example, if you used a color palette or something, or you used a particular technique, it would be better if you have written that down so that they actually know that you know these things. So
understood.
it would be good
Okay.
if you have a great idea of the write-up and then just go with it.
Okay. Adit, how was it for you? How did you function on the ideation part?
So basically, first off, what I when I looked at the questions, there were questions where I could possibly make this thing look more aesthetic, and there were questions where I was comfortable with. Like I know if I do this, it will look neat, it will look great to the jury. But if I do this other question, it'll look more aesthetic. But I don't know how neat it would be. So I
Mm,
chose the safer bet always to go for the neatness over how something experimental. And when I came to ideation, I didn't give it a lot of time, maybe like 5 minutes. The question I chose was space designing, so it was a space that I was familiar with. So
okay.
I'd just gone off with the flow, the basic things that would be in that space. I just made room for it, and then just went with all the materials I had. Again, I used the textures and stuff like that.
So any other sources initially while you're preparing for any other sources like Pinterest or any other platforms that you had used, Adit?
I had used Pinterest when I was back in ThiNC to make models. It really helped a lot in creating new ways to create, like use paper or clay or different materials, which I hadn't previously known of.
Okay. Rachel, how was the different types of materials for you? Like, what were the materials that you had explored, that you had tried your hands on before getting into the situation test? What are the variety of materials?
So we practiced with ivory sheets, which is like the thicker version of paper. Then colored sheets, of course. Then we had cardboards. So it's important to know how to cut a cardboard because it might crack or it might bend, like Adit said. Then we have tried with OHP sheet, which is that film kind of sheet. Then we use corrugated sheets, which actually has a texture. So we should be careful while cutting it or shaping it because it's not as flexible as a normal paper. So it would be harder for it to actually bend. So their scoring method would be used. Then we used clay. Then we used wooden sticks. Then wires. Yeah, these were the basic materials that would also be provided there. Nothing, I don't think we had any other extra materials other than this. It was just these basic elements.
Okay. Any other materials to add on to this list, Adit? Anything else that you have to add on?
No, not really. These were the basic materials that they gave.
Okay. Now, when you talk of neatness, when you're talking about using materials like clay, it sort
Mm,
of messes up the whole thing, right?
mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Adit, how did you work on that? How was your preparations for that?
The clay, when the clay we used back in ThiNC was actually really good clay. There wasn't a lot of oil, and when I got this clay from at the exam, I was actually very surprised at how leaky it
Oh,
was. So I was kind of confused on how I would use this and how I would not mess it up on my model. So when I came to the clay, I just made sure it was miniature models of things in the space. I didn't use it to create the room or anything, like small artifacts inside of the room that wouldn't mess up the rest of the area. That's what I use the clay for. So it wouldn't affect most of the model.
so knowing even the properties of each material and how they could be used, the strengths and weaknesses of each material, I think is also something that's very, very
Mm.
important, right? Quite
Yeah.
Quite interesting. Okay. Now, when we're talking of questions, what were the different kind of questions, Rachel? So, can you recollect what were the different kinds of questions that you had in situation test? Did you have options and things like that?
So we basically had three questions. The first question was a abstract model or a model making, and we were given three topics for that also. For example, an emotion like mother's love, and there were two other topics. And the first question was basically a model making. The second one was actually a pop-up card, and even that had three themes, from which we could choose one. And the last question was a space design, like I said. It could be an interior or a classroom or a space for a space for kids play. And these were the questions that were basically there. And we could just choose from one of the three questions, and from one of the three sub themes, we could just choose one. We could attend from that.
Okay. Adit, what were the major strengths or weaknesses that you had identified? Like in that 2 weeks, what were the certain areas that you were good at? What were the certain areas that you will have to be, a bit cautious? You seem to be somebody who is very sorted out in a lot of things. The way you're talking,
Yeah.
your brain functions, I'm assuming. So elaborate
Uh,
that, please.
I would say I was really good at the material handling and how I used materials. That is
Mm.
one thing that I consider one of my strengths. Even in back in think, a lot of people did compliment me on that. How I used seemingly normal materials to something else. That was really one of my plus points, I think. And a weakness for me was always time management. That was like a problem.
Okay. Having said that, that's my next question. So how did you cope up with that, or did you even cope up with that? Could you succeed?
Yeah, definitely it's succeedable because I did complete it for the NIFT exam. Basically, what I did was I didn't experiment too much. That's what I did
Oh,
for the exam.
okay. Oh, that's the
So
earlier point that you're making about not going
yeah,
for too much of experiment. Okay, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
because it's always a risky move to do it in the exam. If you're going to experiment, you should do it before it while you're practicing, so that you can do it the most efficient way possible. So that's what I
So
think.
just in case you're bleeding, let you bleed in the practice pitches,
Yeah,
not in the examination hall.
exactly.
Talking about time management, Rachel, how was it? How was it for you?
I, for me personally, I'm very bad at time management, but somehow for the situation test, I managed to do everything on time, and I was actually happy with my final product. Because 2 hours is enough. Like, since I didn't spend much time on ideation, like there is no chance of redoing the whole thing. That is one thing that we have to keep in mind, because you won't get extra material at any cost. So, time management, I had an idea that I took the pop-up card, and my theme I took was something like space or astronaut or something like that. So I had an idea, like within 15 minutes I would cover my front page. Then I'll go to the back page. Then I'll do the pop-up thing. Then and I finally saw it all coming together, and I was happy with how I managed time for the situation test. Yeah.
So basically, you messed up everywhere except in the NIFT situation test.
Yes. Yes, sir.
That's quite lucky. Okay. Before I move to the next questions, so obviously both of you are from NIFT Hyderabad. So we would also like to get a sneak peek of how exactly are things at NIFT Hyderabad. Adit, how is life after joining NIFT Hyderabad?
It's been great actually. I really like it. Apart from the academic, I actually feel a lot better personally. There's a lot more freedom.
അതെ അതെ
Yeah,
ഞാൻ കാണാറുണ്ട് ഇൻസ്റ്റാഗ്രാമിൽ പറയൂ.
yeah, yeah. Then academics wise, it's a lot. I think a lot more less strict than other NIFs compared to other NIFs.
Okay,
So that
okay,
was a really good plus point, I think, when it comes to a design college.
okay. Are you still
Yeah.
happy with the fact that you've chosen NIFT over
Yes,
NID?
I am still.
Great, great. Okay. Rachel, how is it for you? How's it been for you for the last one year or so?
Yeah, so it's been a really good experience. It's nice here actually. Time with our friends, and though I haven't gone out a lot, but being here is a happy thing for me. And academic wise also, I am enjoying what I'm doing personally. Even though it's kind of hectic some days, and I feel like jump. No, I feel like running away.
Okay.
I feel like running away, but at the end of the day, when I see my final product and I look at it, I feel so proud and happy of what I'm doing. So that keeps
Okay.
me going, even though, I don't sleep sometimes, but yeah,
So I think
fine.
that's keeping the jokes aside. I think that's one of the most important things. Like, right, when you're choosing a career or when you're choosing a specialization, it's something that's going to stay with you for a long period of time, right? It's something that's as important as partner. Probably you might be able to change your partner, but not your career that easily. That easily. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Coming to the chat box, I have a question. It's the right time to take a question. So, do we have to register again for the NIFT registration? Sorry, again for the situation test. Yeah. So usually I'll share the experience of usually what happens. Rachel can also talk about how it went for the last year. So usually what happens is you will be given a window time period within which you will have to log in again and register. Register in the sense like you will have to choose the examination center. That is which NIFT campus you want to go and attempt your NIFT situation test. It could be NIFT Kannur, it could be NIFT Chennai, it could be NIFT Bangalore, whichever ones you feel is comfortable or nearer to you. Okay. And from what I remember, there are only fixed amount of seats. So it's on first come, first serve basis. So the one who registers first will get that. The moment the number of seats that are available for NIFT Bangalore is over, it won't be visible in the portal. So that goes away. Okay. So that is how it usually happens, right? Did I miss out on anything, Adit, Rachel?
No, that was
And
actually
it's
good.
also important to download every document that you get from NIFT because they sometimes when we go and ask them anything, they stand clueless and they blame everything on us. So it's very important to have every document printed or have the soft copy of everything.
One thing that NIFT has always been consistent about is the cluelessness. They're always
Yes.
clueless, be it about the exams or be it about the
Yes.
counseling. And by the
Exactly.
looks of it, even after getting into the campus, it seems like they are a bit
Yes.
clueless. Okay. So there's a question from Teddy Cute which says, when will be the NIFT situation test? So we're not sure when exactly the NIFT situation test will be, but we're expecting it somewhere to be in between April, in the mid of April, probably. So they might open up the window for registering by towards the March and or April 1st. And all. Okay. Having said that, this is NIFT. You never know, anything could happen. Okay. So I'm putting my disclaimers for that. We have our new batches for NIFT situation test at things that are starting from tomorrow. If you have any doubts, queries, and all, you can contact us at the number that's given. I would request the host to please share it in the live chat box. Okay. So coming back to the NIFT situation test. Okay. Now talk about the material usage. So Adit, you will be given a lot of materials, right? So what is the objective to ensure that there is zero wastage, you use everything, or to ensure that you use it in optimum quantity so that your product looks good? What's the priority?
I would always say to make the product look good, but it's also important that you use all of it, all the materials given in some sort of way. Even if it's small, it should be there because uh, how you use it is one of the criterias the judges look on. How creatively you use that material. So that is one thing, but always
Okay.
neatness over experiment.
Okay. Rachel, what's your take on the material usage?
Yes, it's important to use all of the materials that are given, and one way or the other, you have to actually use it. If clay is not actually visible, also you should be using it either to make joints or make the whole product stable. Anyhow, you have to use the product. You have to use all of the materials that are given. Yeah, it's
Okay.
how creatively used. Maybe I could use the uh, metal wire for some other purpose, but others could use it for joining things or making
Hmm.
stand or any other way. Any other way, you have to actually use every material.
Okay. Now, when we talk of a question like, let's say, okay, to everyone who's been watching in the live, if you have any other questions related to how to attempt certain things in the situation test or what are the kind of preparations that you would want to know, please do not hesitate to post it in the live chat box. We would be winding up the session within probably 5 or 6 minutes. Now, talking about space design. So, Rachel, space design is obviously a question that has a lot to do with even the proportion, different types of materials that we're going to use, the different sizes in which that are to be kept, and things like that, right? So, how did you work on those things? Can you please let us know?
Yeah, so in THiNC, we actually practiced a few space design questions, but in the exam hall, I didn't attend that question. So in THiNC, when we did, I am someone who, who mainly focus on aesthetics also because I want my things to look very pretty. So like that. Uh, and you have, you know, how much material you'll be using for each thing. So you have, like I said, you have to use that like that. And for space design, basically, you have to fill the space. Like you have to make them feel like you did something. You had put a lot of effort into it. So if it's a bedroom and you have a bed, you have a chair, and that's it, then that's not gonna work. You have to add more smaller elements. Maybe you could use clay to make a flower, like anything, maybe a picture on the wall. And for example, for backdrop, another thing that we learned from things is like we could use paper weaving method that we use and make a backdrop with that. So it will actually make it look quite different. But in a very short period of time, you could actually achieve it. And if you have textured paper, you could use it for flooring. Then the proportion should be made correct so that lots of negative space or blank space is not left. So that is another important thing that we need to. And it's all in your imagination. Like how well you imagine, how well you organize the space is another important thing. At the end of the day, it should look good.
Okay. So, space design, anything else that Adit you would like to add on to this?
I think the questions for space design is always a place that you're very familiar with. Like it's gonna be a doctor's office or a playground, something like that. So I think what they judge on is your observation skills. So what all the things that you see in those areas, how well can you recollect those and create models of it and place it in your space? That's something that should always be, in your mind. It's how good your observational skills are of those places.
A fun question, actually. If you look back at it now, would you have done a bit more differently? Like after joining NIFT and being here for 6 months, do you think you would have done something different, Adit?
Me personally, I actually really like my model. I don't think I would do anything differently. Yeah.
Okay, Rachel, how about you? Do you think you could have done some variations with the kind of learnings that you've had in the last 6 months?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I like my model, but then I would definitely improve it because I've learned, more of material handling skills when I've come here and
Mhm.
perfection. Or, one thing that I usually mess up is while joining something, the glue spreads and I try to
Mhm.
wipe it with my hands and then the dirt falls into the paper
Mhm.
also. So that's one thing that I always keep repeating. So like now I'm trying to actually improve on that. So
Okay.
I would like to improve that.
Okay, great. Coming to the last couple of questions. So the second last question is obviously about the write-ups. So how to write good write-ups. So Adit, how was it for you? How did you practice? What was your logic?
I think write-ups they do really check on how good you articulate your ideas. So according to the questions, so the second question I think was about the like emotions. So
Mm,
if you have a really good aesthetic looking model, but you don't have the write-up to back up that model and the meanings behind it, it's not gonna work. Like
mm,
a lot of the meanings or a lot of the details you put into that, the
mm,
judges would not see. So
mm,
you would lose marks on that. So if you're going to choose like the emotion or an art installation type of model,
mm,
always make sure your write-up is always on par. Like you articulate it well and you have really good English, written it in really good English. And for the rest of the models, for like space designing, I would say you should say what all materials you used, how you used it, and stuff like that. More of an informative write-up.
Okay. I have another question in the live chat box before I go to Rachel. So, can I write stuffs on the model that I am making? Am I permitted to write on
No,
the model?
you are not.
Okay. So, never take such sort of a chance, guys. Okay. Rachel, so how was it? How did you manage your write-up? What was your theory?
Hmm. Write up, I guess I didn't do it at the last minute because, or else I had to save the time for that. But I didn't do it at the last minute. And for write up, basically, you have to write the theme, or maybe you have taken an inspiration from something. So you could mention that also in your write up. And overall, I guess this is how they evaluate because once we go, they just keep our models in the table. And I guess the judges will come to each table, go through the tables, and just look at it. So first thing is you have to impress people. If you stand out only, they'll actually see you. Or so, even if it's the model or the writer, try to make it perfect. Try to, impress the judges. And like Adit said, if it's an abstract model, you need to have a clear write-up on what it means. Like if you're using curves in that, if you're using bold lines in that, give a meaning to it. Why you have used those, why you have used curve lines, why you have used this color. And for pop-up card or anything like that, you have a theme. So what all elements from that theme did I input in my model? And how did I use those materials? How did I bring those materialistic quality or the quality of that by these materials? Then we could include the color palette that we have used, maybe monochrome or something like that. And if you have used paper techniques like origami, weaving, that would be a plus point. Like they will know that you know these techniques. So it would be better if you include that. That interior and space also, you could mention the materials used, the elements, the inspiration, or anything you could include in that. Just
Okay.
stand out. That is the main thing. Do whatever to stand out.
Okay, that's great. So final thoughts, if you have to say something about a student or an aspirant who has, let's say, 15 days. Okay. What would be your final thoughts? I would start with Adit. 15 days for NIFT situation test. What to do, what not to do.
Always don't be lazy. That's one thing. Don't waste your time. Then you should always exploration is a really
Mm.
important thing because they do give a lot of variety of materials. You should play on textures, know how certain textures would look very different, other textures. And another thing that I remembered was when you're making a model for the situation test, always make sure it's very stable and strong because you never
Oh,
know how they're going to handle the model after our exams. So if it's something like it can break apart very easily, there's a very high chance that the judges might not even be able to look at your model. So
mm.
always make sure it's strong. So no techniques to make structures stronger.
Okay. Rachel, final thoughts.
What I'd say is like try exploring these materials, then paper handling, cutting, and all of that. And you don't have to be very tensed before the exam or the time before the exam because I feel we'll be more productive when we give ourselves some time and have confidence. And through this exam, people around you will be working, and while seeing the model, we might get tensed. But I'm saying don't just leave it. Don't just see that. Just believe and be happy of what you are doing because at the end of the time, no one else is going to cheer you up. You just have yourself to cheer you up. So it's better to, concentrate on what you are doing and just go with it.
Okay. There's another question that has come. So it's about they're asking about your departments in NIFT and a few statements about that. Before we move on to that, there's been a number that's been shared by the host in the live chat box. So if you want to join our online NIFT situation test batches or our offline NIFT situation test batches, you can contact us at those numbers 8086111055. We'll be starting it from tomorrow. Okay. So yes, Adit, can you guys tell us about the departments they are in and how is it going?
Okay, so I'm in FC department. Right now,
Okay.
I'm still in my foundation program, so I still haven't gone into my department. But from what I've heard, there's a lot of photography, videography, and graphics to work on. And another thing that I would suggest to everyone is, apart from college studies, you should always work on your own thing. Like when it comes to the last year, from like advice I've heard from the seniors is that you should always have your own like brand. So you should always, if you're going into photography, maybe have a photography social media account, work on it, make your own portfolio. Apart from your college works, always work on yourself, have your own portfolio. So when it comes to campus selections, you'll have a much better chance at getting good deals.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Rachel, how's it been for you? Which is your department?
I'm in fashion design department, but we both are in the foundation program only. We haven't got into the department actually. So right now we have classes as common classes, and from next year only we'll be splitting into our departments. And then, like Adit said, you need to work on other things also. And it's not if it's a even if it's a fashion college, it's not only fashion. Like for example, fashion communication. It doesn't focus on fashion only, or there is scope for other elements also. And talking about accessory design, you have space design in that, product design in that. So we are not limiting ourselves to only fashion as such, but we are actually having an overall look at everything. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, great. So it has been an very interesting session with both of you guys talking about from NIFT to way back to your preparations at ThiNC for the NIFT situation test. We hope that we'll be again this year also we'll be able to send a lot of students from ThiNC to NIFT and NIFT Hyderabad specifically. We have around 460 plus selections this year for the NIFT situation test. So you can keep NIFT Hyderabad ready. We'll have a lot of students coming up, and we also hope to see you guys soon. Okay. So thank you to all the participants for joining. Thanks a lot to the backend team of ThiNC also. Thanks a lot, and to both of you champions, Adit and Rachel, to squeeze out time from your busy schedule. Even though you're not getting time to sleep, you could come down for a live. So we are very thankful to both of you. So thank you, Adit, and thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, sir.
And that's it. We would be winding up until we see in the next session. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, host.